The one I'm looking at, and the only one I kind of built out, is this one called the Overvaluation of Truth. But before that, I'll say this one thing. I gotta say this quote from last week that I just skipped. When we talked about concretistic thinking, and we talk about extroverted thinking, and we talked about objective mind last week. And this one is not long, so I think it just gets to the point. I'll just give you the quote from Jung. And damn, I gotta back up a little bit. We said it last week, but extroverted thinking is basically, the way Jung explains it, is just concretistic thinking or ideal thinking. So his quote was, so far as the recognition of facts is concerned, this orientation is naturally of value, but not as regards the interpretation of facts and their relation to the individual. Concretism sets too high a value on the importance of facts and suppresses the freedom of the individual for the sake of objective data. So that's the full quote. And that's kind of, once again, just another supporting element of what I was just trying to say. Like, once you get so objective, once you become like that, you don't really relate this idea or none of this material to the individual, which is problematic in on the ethical frame for me. So
that's fair. I think it's cool, and it's key to focus on the fact that the extroversion is not a social dynamic; it's with the actual mental dynamics, where looking at things that are outside of the individual.
Right. Cool. I mean, so I guess we can kick off the other one. This is my idea. I was thinking about the overvaluation of truth. I think we touched on this at the end of the talk last week, actually, because I was just talking about how I caught this Ayn Rand UK talk, and people just, seems like people continuously fall in this pitfall of trying to, just having this expectation of rationality from all people as if this is the only thing that needs to be fixed, like, and so it just blows my mind that it seems to me these people have a blind spot, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure how willing it is, but it is certainly a blind spot. It's true. It's like, all right, I am this way. Everybody is this way. My perspective is the only perspective. They clearly will just need to do what I did. I don't know if that's the only way to look at this. No, it is the way you're looking at this. I agree with that part. Not debating on that one. It's not helpful. How's it working for you? Did you make a lot of friends? Everybody agrees now?
I don't know about the friendship piece. Maybe people could be successful with it. Maybe they get friends from success, whatever. I try not to subscribe to it. And I did, but I will say it's probably something that I have done before until I was like, oh, you're projecting your framework on everyone else. That's not very helpful in conversation. It's not very helpful in communication. So you might want to stop doing that.
Exactly.
That kind of brought me to the idea. But overvaluation of truth. One thing, I had to split it. So I'm really this is disjointed in a sense, because here's my idea. There are two truths. I know people probably be like, this is a terrible thing to say, right? But we need to understand. I need to understand what I want to say, because there are raw facts and there is reason that's associated, or rationality that's associated to the raw facts. And for some people, truth is the facts themselves. And for other people is the rational interpretation of the facts. And this creates a disconnect. This is what I mean about the overvaluation of truth. Because when you adopt a framework and you say, oh, I'm going to just apply this framework to all the data that comes in, it's like, oh, this is true. That's true. Sometimes what you're saying is true is not technically true. It's true for the framework that you have accepted.
Well, you just have to define. You have to define that a little bit more. Like that's because we're talking about perspectives at this point, or we're talking about definitions at this point too. When we're saying some people actually define truth as the outside data that they're receiving, and some people will define truth as how they interpret that data. And I'm like, okay, they're defining truth differently. So they're like, everybody has their own truth. I'm like, everybody has their own perspective. Everybody even can have their own interpretation of data out there. And if we're gonna have a discussion about truth, and we have to say, like, these are the things. When we say truth, we are referring to either the things out there or the way I'm seeing things in here. And I understand that is that's not something everybody agrees on, but I just need a distinction so you know what we're talking about.
I mean, I think part of this is going to be helping me come up with a distinction, to be honest with you, because I'm not trying to I'm not even saying that these things are wrong, Josh, because
not yet. We're not making moral judgments, right? We're just trying to describe things at this point.
True. But here's the thing, and this is why I can't, because I know I am one way. And so I know what I think about when I'm saying truth. It's about this whole idea of relevance, relevant to the individual. Because if you state a whole bunch of facts and you say, man, this is the truth. And then I say, well, you never made that relevant to to an individual. And so therefore it ain't useful truth. It's irrelevant truth. It's just a bunch of facts, you know? And so, but at the same time, I don't necessarily have to get all the way into it, but this is the disconnect that I'm seeing, is that there are people who, because they don't use a full mental framework to say, oh, here are these facts and here's how they relate to the individual or relevance to life. I just see these are facts. People kill each other. People bang. It's like, well, should you do those things? Are these things good? Is that the truth? Well, it happens. Yeah, it happens. Yeah, it's out there. But people will say, well, you're just trying to be blind to the truth. And it's like, well, no, I understand you're seeing the same things that I'm seeing, but I'm taking it a step further to go to where it's relevant and matters. And that's what I mean about that.
Apply the truth, apply the facts to these, so we can then have a meaningful discussion.
Right. And so I don't really know how to distinguish these things, because to me, fact for fact's sake is a bit, man, it's a slippery slope. It's primitive, but interpretation for interpretation's sake can be dogmatic. So, yeah. But do you understand what I'm saying about this, though?
Yes. There is a challenge when it comes to having people. It's a challenge in getting people on the same page. It's a challenge in having just conversation where we want to have clarity. I think it's part of the effort. We'll say that it's part of the effort that it takes to have a conversation, reach out to where the other person's at, and then start from their perspective. And then after empathizing with their position, try to have some actual helpful ways to have shared ground. You want to have common ground. You want to find some things that we can both connect on. And therefore, we need to have a common language. And while everybody, quote unquote, speaks English, a lot of people use English very differently than the dictionary. And so that makes it really challenging when we're saying there's no standard. We're all just living our own lives, making it up as we go. I'm like, hey, creativity exists and there are real things that we're doing. Sure. And I'm happy we all have our perspectives. That's cool too. But we're human beings, and you and I came together to establish some sort of connection. I can't have a connection if you just keep saying that everybody is so different that we can't understand each other. One, that's not true, but it's not that is not the experience we have. But most importantly, we have the opportunity to do better than that. Even if it was a lived experience where we had poor understanding, that would be a reason to change. But what I'm trying to get at is that once we can define things as saying these things are outside of us, that are happening in an objective way, they're happening external to us, and they're happening to both of us. Are you, hey person over there, are you willing to agree that those things that are happening outside of us, that none of us chose, that just happened to both of us, like this storm or this gravity or, the sun and sky being blue, like these things are outside of our control. Can we both agree these things exist? Okay, now that we can agree they exist, can we call that truth? Let's call that truth. This is existence. Can A be A? Excellent. If we can at least agree on existence, then we can start saying, how are you interpreting existence? How is existence treating you? What's your experience been? And then I can relate my experience, and then we can connect on those shared experiences.
So I think it's different. Maybe I'm not explaining it right. And if I give you an example, capitalism, just one that pops in my mind. So for some people, look, man, capitalism puts people in hierarchies. And this person is always there, and that person is always there, and this person is always there. This is the truth. And for me, I'm thinking, past that. I'm like, well, if you look at more facts and look at it in context and with reason in relationships to individuals, these things are actually a good thing. And this person is just seeing this immediately observable thing. And I'm thinking of the full context. So this is what I mean about, well, I think that's a little bit presumptuous of myself, but this is what I mean. I'm looking at it with more context. And this is a difference in this is what I mean. When some people just see facts, they say this is truth. And I'm not going to argue with a person that is just seeing facts, but they're just not. To me, if it's not relating to an individual, and maybe I can go to some other parts, maybe that might help. But I think this is the way, because we can't be contextless, right? But some people's context isn't very deep. This is why it can be disconnected, be fragmented.
Yes. All I'm saying is, if you're going to talk about an overvaluing of truth, there has to be an appropriate valuing of truth.
Got it. I got it. So here's the interesting thing that I think is going to come up with this, and I'll get into, because it's a couple bullet points here, but I'll just lay out a little bit. Some of this is going to come from Jung, and the whole idea of it. Most people that speak about truth in depthly are going to be a certain type of way, and the type of truth that they're talking about, many of them, is going to be like reason and rationality, right? And so I'll just kind of get into this next part, and then maybe I might get to a quote from Jung. But at the base of what he's saying is that in the Enlightenment, because he was going through Schiller's arguments, and then Schiller he comes out and is just like, why are we still barbarians? We've been enlightened. Reason has won the day. What is wrong with everybody? Right? And then basically Jung is laughing at him while he's writing, it sounds like. It's like, man, what is he? He's like, what rationalism? It's like, if reason was so great, then why didn't it win for all of those decades and centuries before? If truth was so, was so dominant.
Right.
And so this is what he was saying that his words is his flaw. And this is what I wrote in my book about Rand too, as well, is similar, is there's an overvaluation of truth. And so within this is what you can identify as my leanings, as truth is full context, contextual knowledge, contextual facts. It's not just facts for facts' sake. It's contextual. And those are the people I lean towards when I'm listening to them, when I'm writing. Those are the people, when they say things, I'm thinking, well, that could be true. But people who just spit objective facts with no connection, I don't want to say it's not truth. It just doesn't rise to the level of what I would consider truth.
Well, it's just not useful knowledge yet. It's something that just like, hey, these facts exist. I'm like, yes, you were able to recognize that facts exist. Thank you. If I need reference, I can come to you and say, hey, what facts did you say exist again? Great. Thank you for sharing. I have that clarity now, or I have more knowledge from you than I had before. But that's not the same thing as saying, how do we use these facts? What do these facts mean? Or, in what way are these facts helpful? Like we're not getting to that next level of interpretation. I think that's a helpful distinction for me to make, to say like, okay, certain people focus on how many facts they can remember, and certain people are trying to say these facts are useful. Certain facts can be more useful than others, and so we can use our critical thinking and have this criteria of utility to say, all right, let's categorize some of these facts into the useful category and focus on those things when we are speaking to each other, so our conversation is more productive. And that's a different value set or different goal. And I think that's helpful to be able to communicate early on. We're just like, oh, truth matters. I'm like, yes, it does. What truth matters? Because it's great that you want to focus on facts and say things exist. Yes. What things exist in this context that actually matters to us? Because that's what conversation is supposed to be helping with.
I guess it's a couple of things that you said that I think we can get back to. because I probably forgot. Oh, it's piqued my attention, but it's like people, there's a mechanism here. And I think my issue is that just that people are taking one side or the other. And this is kind of what I want to get to. So I'm gonna just jump into the next part. It's not the next part, it's just a bullet point to try to introduce something new in here. And so just kind of going back and forth with, the computer, whatever. And it says, explain how humans conflate their interpretations, reasoning, or rationality with observed facts and reality. Observations provide raw external data while reason transforms these into subjective interpretations. These are two distinct elements of truth, but they are often treated as one. And this is my thing. It's often treated as one.
Yep.
That's how people, and to me, I see it you could say it with religion, but you see it with every framework. I mean, I didn't mean to say, you see it with reason, but you see it with every framework. If you're not effectively taking the facts and then getting to reason, or taking the facts and then getting to your judgment, and then you're just like, okay, if you treat everything like a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. You know what I'm saying?
I hear you.
And so it becomes, I know why that happened. Jesus said this, the God said that. And it's like, how can all of the things that we said be Jesus damned us? Or, you know what I'm saying? Or God damned us. But this is how people start. They're like, I have this framework. This is my framework for thinking. And it's not just religion. It's anybody who takes a specific position. And it's not that you have to be adaptable all the time. It's just that be honest, just be earnest about understanding the mechanism, the whole, how facts lead up into a point. And then not even say a point, how facts lead up into a reasonable position. And then once you gain enough context, you can apply that reasonable position to situations as you go along.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to be mentally rigorous. It's good to actively think through what's been going on with data you have, and only change your conclusions based off of new data. If you get new data, he's like, okay, this changes the context now. We are now in a different situation than we were before. We didn't know this now. We didn't know this before, so we made the best conclusion of what we had. Now we have new things. Now we get to course correct, and all our interpretations, or a lot of our interpretations, are trying to take what we observe and make some sort of framework or perspective, a worldview that allows us to function in the world a little bit better and achieve our goals. And so I think it's helpful to stay cognizant of what the data is. And as we get better data, we do better things, make better choices, at least.
That's true. I mean, but are people doing that? I guess is a question. And because have you ever heard anyone say that they're two distinct elements of truth, but they're many times viewed as one? Have you ever heard anybody say that?
No. I've not heard people say that.
But does it sound honest to you? Or
I mean, that is a true statement, because I've seen people, or I've observed people conflate the two. They're like, what happened, and my interpretation of what happened, I was saying, this is the truth. Why don't you know the truth? Why don't you allow the truth to dictate your actions? I'm like, we have not even discussed, you have not even communicated what you think truth is. And I don't know that you can, because you are putting all the things together, and in your mind, it is clear as day. But in the rest of our minds, we are all wondering what your experience is, because clearly you reached the conclusion. And that conclusion must have been based on something, because it wasn't based on just an observation of the facts. You made a judgment call here somewhere. What were you doing? Why don't you say that? Like, use your words. But yeah, it happens a lot. That kind of observation happens a lot, which is challenging to deal with.
It's challenging to deal with. I would venture to say that it's not as challenging to deal with if you know what you're dealing with. Because I think sometimes, man, people who develop, what would you call it, like a deep context, or I don't want to say full, because that's almost like absolute, but a deep context for ideas or any type of phenomena or whatever. Mm-hmm. I think they automatically just think that they're smarter than everybody else, right? And I'm not saying that they aren't, but what I'm saying is that if you've taken the position that I know already, then you're really not in a position to learn anymore, you know? And so this is kind of like the way I try to go through life is just, I understand my context. My context is what helps me to maneuver quickly when I'm doing things. Yes, everything looks like a hammer sometimes, and that's how I'm going to go about it, especially when it comes to morality or ethics, really, when it comes to ethics. But I still keep an active mind because I'm always trying to take in data. But at the same time, you can't, the brain has limitations, right? Mm-hmm. And so you can't just be super objective like we were talking about last week. Like, you can be objective. You want to look at the facts, but you don't want to not have any context to shape these facts into any meaning, you know? And I encounter people who don't, to me, if you're supposed to be highly intelligent, highly well-read, you know, and know a lot of things, you should understand that these are basic differences between people. And maybe this is a fundamental thing I'm getting from Jung, or this is an understanding that I'm coming into, but I'm able to like shift. So like, even when I put in the book and I say speak to sensation, what that means is that I'm just talking about the facts and the facts themselves. I have a specific meaning that I'm talking about, but maybe I might be talking to a person that's not thinking with that type of context. I still want to communicate, and just because they're not thinking with that type of context doesn't mean what they're seeing is wrong. It just means that it's only going but so deep in a directional way. That's what I mean about having a full understanding of both sides of this picture.
And that's fair. I mean, to have both sides, to get both sides means you actively spent time reflecting on your own perspective and gathering data from other people to reflect on the other people's perspective, which takes work and effort and time that a lot of people have not all demonstrated in a lot of people's conversation. And so I think it's helpful to distinguish when people say things that are unhelpful, to ask poignant questions or mention the common fallacies that people have fallen into before. And, you know, if they're willing to go on that journey and keep thinking, great. And if not, then move on and find someone else who is.
That's a possible answer. But also, I think part of what I want to get to is just that, I mean, overall, what I want to get at. Some people overthink the room. This is my thing. There are people that if you listen to them, they have a different kind of wisdom, right? Okay. They didn't have to be well read. They didn't have to, I don't know, grow up rich, but that's not really an element that you gotta have at all. It's just that, but if you start turning your mind off to people, and I mean, this is not me advocating for you just to be open to everything, but it's just this, it's really, my goal here is to say, understand that if you were one of these people walking around with a deep context that you use it as a hammer and everything is a nail all of the time, then you're so smart that you're stupid. That's what I'm looking. That's what I'm thinking about.
I hear you.
This person isn't using reason. This person, if they just had first principles, this is not an expectation that I have from everybody that I deal with. And I don't think that everybody I deal with is a dummy. You know what I'm saying? So it's just that, how can I relate to them? How they're talking about the cold hard facts. Why would the cold hard facts be irrelevant to a person that's trying to be rational, like myself, or trying to be reasonable? The cold hard facts themselves are not antithetical to what I'm doing. They may not be as relevant as I like them to be all the time, but I just don't want to lose track of that. So
yeah, I think it's super helpful to be really clear about which facts we need to use, which facts we're referring to, which facts we are using in this conversation to build toward a mutual goal. I think that's key to be able to pull people back and keep things in context.
Okay, that's my goal here. So then it kind of just goes through, you know, and I haven't vetted this at all, so I'm kind of thinking about it as I'm reading it. It might be something crazy. It's like, highlight the need to approach these elements independently, which I don't see that happen. I think people think they're just one and the same. And that's the issue that I'm having. It's like, there are two elements of truth. There's a level 1 element of truth, and then there's a level 2. I'll just say it's a level 1 and a level 2. Perceptual element of truth, then conceptual element of truth. And people conflate the two.
Yes. Yes, which makes it challenging in the sense of not wishing people to refer to things as truth. It's like, okay, let's accept that true things exist. Let's accept that real things exist. Let's talk about the things you've observed, and let's talk about what you think about those things. Because if we can discriminate between those two things, we can stop using the word truth poorly. Just, I don't want my truth to be your truth or other truth. We don't have to go back and forth on which truth we're going to vote for today or who all believes what. Like, I don't need to debate reality. Let's take some time and actually make sure we can say, what have you observed? What have I observed? And then clarify that perception so that we can move on to a point of describing, okay, how is this applicable? What did you think about this? What was your criteria? Why did you think this? Why did you interpret those things this way?
Got it. Real quick, while I look for this, right? Are facts and truth equivalent or distinctly different?
Right. In the context of this conversation, we have to call those things. We have to say that they are actually the same, but are perceived as different. And so, like, capital T truth, that existence exists is something that we really should not debate, but people do. And they're allowed to say things. You're allowed to be wrong, but you're allowed to be inconsistent with reality. We'll say that.
Okay.
And, so yeah, we have to agree that existence exists. And when that happens, that's our capital T truth. We use our capital T truth to observe these facts and then say, okay, truth and facts are one and the same. I'm like, great. Like, I believe this about that. And that belief is a thought that I hold on to so closely. That's also something I think is the truth. I'm like, okay, now we're doing something different. Now we are making judgments, and that's cool. And if you want to consider this judgment the most, like, something that is so certain that you consider it just as certain as the observation, I'm like, that is a choice you have made, but it is not actually the same. Like, we have to make a distinction at that point in time and saying, now the judgment you have made is a lower key truth. This is a thing that you think is the truth. And you're considering as the truth, which is cool. You're allowed to that is your choice, but you just can't project that onto other people. I mean, like, when you project that onto other people, they have the right to push back and, like, you are saying something for you. You're saying this thing for you. And I believe that you think that for you, but I didn't show up to this and agree to take on every single thought you have. And that's where more conversation can come in when it comes to persuasion and debate and the rest of that. So I just think it's helpful to have that clarity to say this perception is a more capital T truth that we can say existence exists, and where we make these judgments, it's a lower key truth, and we can have a discussion then on, like, how many people you can convince or persuade or debate into having that clarity. So to answer your question, yes, facts should be the observable stuff that should be associated with a capital T truth.
I mean, this seems problematic to me, right?
It is. I see this thing, this is how I see it, and I realize that other people are like, well, I don't see it that way. I'm like, and now we are getting back into this gray zone, which I'm like, you don't have to be, but I try to keep myself out of the gray zone by saying these things that we can't change are our capital T truth. And people are like, but they are not that same way in all times and all places. And I'm like, that's true, because I'm not referring to absolutism. I don't want to ever pretend to be an ideologue. I'm not trying to say that nothing else changes in the world. I'm saying that in this context, this way that I'm speaking right here, we observed that the sun was hot, gravity was this much, and the sky was blue. And this time, where I was right here, I'm referring to the things I observed as truth.
I mean, yes. So the perceptual piece, right? You call it the capital T truth. I mean, to me, it's all related to the senses. It has to be something that's related to the senses, because it has no real meaning. It's just the thing was red. It was round. It went fast, or, something like that. Maybe even not even it went fast, because what is fast too?
It's a relative term. Yep.
But the truth piece seems to be when you've got so many perceptual pieces. That's why it's conceptual. Because like I can't look at all of these things. Is what I am saying in line with the facts? That's in line with the facts. Because perceptual is the actual, no, the thing was this. This was the thing. And conceptual is like, well, you know, it's in this area. We know this. You know, it's oh, this is a building I'm in. It's I don't see all sides of the building. I'm not, I haven't measured the whole thing. You know, the moon is X million miles away or trillion miles away. You know, I haven't been there, but you know what I'm saying? So, but it's in line with the facts. That's kind of how I'm thinking about it. But I guess both can be truth, right? Because facts are truth. Right?
Facts are truth.
So
some people pretend that we can have absolute knowledge. And I always want to go back to like, that is not what I'm referring to. I'm acknowledging the fact that human beings are limited, and so I'm only going to talk about specific relevant facts. There's only going to be a certain kind of risk. I'm going to find pertinent parts of the thing that I'm describing and only mention pertinent parts. There are lots of parts of the thing that I'm missing and that I'm leaving out on purpose because I don't have absolute knowledge. All I have is contextual knowledge. I've learned this much about a thing. I can describe it in these terms, and I'm going to use that as the metaphor to say, when I say this word, it's referring to that thing over there. These are not all the qualities of the thing. These are the pertinent qualities that I am referring to. And when I say this is the facts, when I'm like the sun is hot, I didn't mention that it was yellow, that sometimes it has other colors, that sometimes it moves. I wasn't talking about that. I was talking in context to say, I noticed that this ball of light in the sky was warm. It gave me more than I had before. And people could say, hey, it's an incomplete fact. I'm like, yes, all facts are incomplete because I don't have all knowledge.
I mean,
let's never pretend that that's what we're doing.
True. I mean, I get that part. But
Nice.
see, I think what you just explained is the smart guy's explanation. And I'm looking for the average guy, because I'm playing the average guy today. I'm trying to look, because what I'm saying is I'm trying to have a practical conversation. And the point I'm trying to get at is the idea of ideas dominating. When ideas start to control, this is kind of what I mean. And how there's a conflict for people who don't build up valid or deep ideas, because some people have such a strong relation to the idea. Once again, it's the hammer and everything is a nail. And the person who is just like, yo, but these are the facts. It's like, well, I know that fact and this is that. Bam. It's like, whoa, and the mechanism is what it is, but there's different formats. It could be a person who has accepted reason dogmatically and stopped thinking. And so they already know the answer. And so now here's that answer. And then the person's like, yo, but this doesn't line up with my understanding of the facts. And the person didn't even look at the facts because they just used the reason that they had stored, but they didn't know that the situation changed. You know?
Right.
The person, and I'm going to bring up religion a lot, because a lot of times with religion is that these are not even your ideas. You didn't develop these ideas of your own. You accepted these ideas and you said, yes, whenever I see this type of person, they need Jesus, or they need blah, 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 or they need to be flogged, or the whole point I'm trying to make is that because a person, when they get a certain context, they'll be like, well, this is the truth. Jesus is life. And these are the examples that I'm familiar with. So this is why I'm using them. I don't necessarily know a whole bunch of different religions, but I'm just saying, like, you can you can have every explanation for everything in the world just by people. There are people who read the Bible who will tell you that everything can be explained through biblical text. And yeah, see, if you believed in Jesus and you knew this, and this is what this means, and this is what that means. It's like, I don't know I'm not willing to accept that. And I don't know that you accurately have identified this thing. You know?
What they're telling you is their level of development. Like, because this happens in every society. Like, you don't have to just have religious rules. Anyone who follows rules has that same kind of, this is what the rules say. The rules are right.
True.
What you have with rules, that's it. It's the rules in the military. It's the rules in the government. It's the rules at work. It's the rules, with good cops, whatever. There are a lot of places where they just go to like, this is the standard. The standard has been accepted. Other people have accepted the standard, and that is what it is now. And that explains the world. We have rules, and now we have order. And so, like, Kevin Wilber explains how people develop through that whole process of, level one, where they get that self-sufficiency and know what they're thinking, or at least identify everything with their mind. And all they have is just, this is me experiencing the world. And then level two, they start noticing other people are in the world too. Level three, they start realizing other people may have thoughts. I don't know. I guess maybe they're also in the world in their own way. And by level four, they're like, you know what? These people with thoughts, some of us agree on what the rules are, and we all now have joint values and joint concerns that we're going to say this is the worldview we accept. This is the perspective we hold to. And once they get to that level of level four, I mean, that's where most order and structure in society comes from. But of the 9 levels that there are, a lot of people get stuck there. Like, usually the levels build on one another, and you get to progress, and you recognize that there's order and structure. And some people are like, you know what? There's also the world outside of the order and structure that we imposed upon it. There's real facts here that make some of these rules helpful in different contexts. Oh wait, I can think through these rules and rise to the level of 5 and say, like, there's objective data that actually points to when these rules are useful. Oh, I can use them over here, over there. And then you get to level 6 and you're like, oh, other societies have different rules too. Those rules are helpful in those contexts in some ways and sometimes. And that's a helpful way for me to look at it, to say, like, this is a way that the human beings can develop, and that if enough human beings develop to a certain level, we can have a whole society develop and like start making new rules or different social norms that we hold people to. And I like the idea of development to the point where if you think about thinking, you can progress through the levels in a way that makes it reasonable. But if you're talking to a person who's stuck at that level 4, it's like, these are the rules. This is how this has to be. If you just thought it like this, you wouldn't have any more questions. You're like, okay, this person is telling me where they are. They have got to the point of rules, and they haven't realized that these rules are only helpful in certain contexts yet. I can help if they are willing to ask. I mean, like, if they're willing to think, I will ask them questions and say, what about this part? How is the rule helpful over here? How could it be more helpful? What do you think about that? Sometimes people are willing to go that direction, and sometimes they're just not. They're not even able to do it.
I mean, so for me, sometimes I'm not willing. For some things, I mean, I don't even feel like I have to even involve myself in some things. When it comes to ethical, moral things, I'll involve myself.
There you go.
And when it comes to preferences, I mean, I'm not that deep into it. But what you were just explaining to me, the issue to me with what you just explained is that there are highly intelligent people very reasonable people who are stuck at that level you said, and it's not because they don't understand first principles. It's not that they don't understand even objectivist philosophy or the reason and perception building up into concepts. It's because maybe it's a practical thing. You can't commute. This is what brought up the conversation for me, is that there are people who think the answer for everything is this person needs to learn first principles. What evidence in history do we have where every person understands first principles like that?
Right.
It's not happening. It's not that it's not a goal. It's just that it shouldn't hinder you from being able to communicate, in my opinion.
Right. Or functioning in society. It would be great if everybody in society knew calculus and how to code and could write music and, could speak every language. That would be great. That would be awesome. Wonderful. It's not reality.
Would it really be wonderful though?
I don't know. But there'd be a lot less a lot less conflating, where people are just like, well, who could know? It's like, we made sure everybody learned this growing up, so everybody should know. But anyway, all I'm saying is, because we don't have those irrational expectations, we get to say, okay, no, education is not the only solution. It may be something that people who have developed on their own have used. They've used that education to reach new levels, and now they have new skills and they have new abilities to make new options. And I'm like, awesome. But to expect every single person all the time to live at that level, to work to those same things is not reasonable, and it's not necessary. And so I think if it's not necessary for people to function, to communicate, and to navigate real world problems, then I'm like, all right, what are the things that are necessary to do that? Like, how do we have that idea of distinguishing the what and the why and the how?
I mean, yeah, because some of these people are completely feckless and dealing with real world problems.
Right. Yes.
They can deal with ivory tower problems, but not real world problems. And I think just because, you understand philosophy and, all of these things, is like, what does it have to do with the price of tea in China? Right. And it's cool. Like, if you were to use it in a good way and this is what I'm saying, if you were to use it in the way that I'm trying to discuss right here, then I think it's great. But to me, and this is part of some of the backlash you see with Trump, but because a lot of people just think, oh, I know these things. I don't even know if they're saying I'm very intelligent, but the way that they explain it is so funny to me, because I don't know why. I don't know if you ever, it's this Chris Rock skit. It's from a long time ago. And he was talking about when people grow up, black kid grow up from his neighborhood, go and get a degree, and, and he doing well for himself, and he come back and he's talking to the dude on the corner, and he's like, yeah, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And he was like, oh yeah, but can you kick my ass? You know what I'm saying? But there's the element of that though. It's like, it's just, to me, it doesn't have to be violent. It's just like, if you could be a get it done person. And
right.
Some heavy thinkers aren't get it done people,
No.
So that's something that, and I feel like sometimes they despise get it done people. Like, well, he didn't use this logic, and man, shut up with all of your logic and reasoning back. Like, you thought it, but you didn't do it. You know what I'm saying? So even if they didn't think it, but they did it, it garners some kind of respect for me, because
I mean, but this complete difference, or there's a significant difference between declarative knowledge and saying, I read the book, I have a bunch of things, versus actual procedural knowledge, where it's like, I went and tried some things. I tried and found out what really worked. I did what worked long enough to where I'm good at it now. I have a skill. I have a skill and knowledge. You just have, somewhat book knowledge that gives you context. It's great to have context. That's a good starting point. But that in no way, shape, or form is that enough to give you the skill. And I think that's something that, it's best when these things are paired, but it's terrible to only do one to the exclusion of the other. And I find that to be a fixable issue. I'm like, this mistake has been done so often. We can just stop repeating this mistake. We get it. Yes, it could be done well. And like example you mentioned, like having people come up in life and doing things where they don't have to actively provide for their own safety physically by fighting every single person that they meet. It's like, I mean, you don't have to kick everybody's ass, but if you're in a boxing ring, you can't pretend like, hey, I have my PhD in boxing. I'm like, did you train that whole time? Oh, I didn't train. I learned all about the history of boxing. I'm like, you should not be in this ring. That's not going to work out. Your declarative knowledge or procedural knowledge, and we are going to teach you some procedures today.
Exactly. And that's necessary, man. That's necessary. So I'm gonna introduce this little one piece, and then I'm gonna get back to the skit, I guess, or the scheme. But it's just Jung in his book, when he talked about the Enlightenment, it was when he was talking about that situation I brought in, like the overvaluation of truth. Yes. It was like sometimes people, what he was saying is how it illustrates how reason as a stand-in for truth was overemphasized to the detriment of other faculties like imagination or intuition. These are all aspects of, this is what I mean. Like, you're repressing other aspects of yourself when you're using these frameworks as if they aren't frameworks, as if they aren't classes. This is why it's like, so, and I'll give you another thing real quick. So we got some feedback from the video we did before. Somebody put in the comments and they were like, well, the woman that you were listening to, she was right. All of this is an illusion, and we're just, what fragments of a whole. And so it gave me a little bit of insight into this, like, oh, see, we've already passed that level.
Yeah.
We know we know we made it up. We made it up because we only care about the things that we can choose and the actions that we can choose. We're past just the things happening. We're worried about how we can, the philosophy, the way to do things that's relevant to our lives. See, you're stuck at level 1.
Right.
The illusion is presupposed for me. So but that's what I mean. But at the same time, it's not that I have a soft spot for that mentality. It's just that I don't think that they mean harm. They just are seeing, they're like, hey, you made this reason up. Yes, we did.
Reasons what?
Right. I didn't know we had to explain that.
I'm not trying to get one over on you. I have that as a precondition of this conversation. Yes. Human beings, a meaning-making machine. We use our brain to make meaning of the things. That's what we did.
Yes. Because it doesn't serve us. We need the things that serve us. We need the things that are relevant to our lives, because we don't need to survive. We want to survive. And since we want to survive, we need to survive.
Right. Something I would like.
And so, but that's just, I don't know if that was something that is obvious to everybody, but that's obvious to me.
Right.
That people, you just didn't catch the part when we said we made it up.
Right.
And like you said about concepts, no, we didn't explain every single thing. That doesn't help us. We need to get the general idea so we can move on and do other things. It's just,
yes, and we get the general idea by focusing on the pertinents, the pertinent positives, like the things that actively describe us in a way to be used. Like, when we use this, make sure you handle it with care because its edge is sharp. The edge over here is smooth. This other edge over here is soft. And this one is smooth. It has sharp edges. Put the gloves on. Let's move on.
Right. Irrelevant.
What are we doing here? What are we doing? Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, man. So I'm still in the introduction phase, but it's kind of carrying the conversation a little bit to me. So it's just, okay. So it's just talking about, introduce the goal to explain the full process of how we arrive at reason by examining two elements of truth independently and how they work together. Yes, it's kind of like what we just spoke about.
Yeah.
I want people to, I understand you. You don't understand that we made it up. And you think that maybe some people operate effectively because there's so many people who don't know that they made it up or that we've made it up. And they're just operating like, don't you know this and don't you know that? Don't you know this is the thing that we developed to deal with the world? This is how you would explain it. Like, no, it's not. I'm not necessarily always telling you everything, all the facts. I'm telling you the things that matter so you can navigate the world and get the things that you want and need. We made it up. That's the thing.
Yeah. Or I'm at least letting you know what I'm doing to help solve my problems so that I get what I want and need out of life. Like, this is the way I see it. This is the way I did it. This is what I have now. It's like, well, this part wasn't fully explained and this part over here is made up. I'm like, yeah, man, a lot of shortcuts happened and a lot of things weren't relevant. I didn't talk about a lot of things that I could have talked about. It's true. There are other things to talk about, but they are not relevant to my specific situation or my specific solution.
Exactly. And to add to that, I could talk till I'm dead and I still won't get to some of it. Oh, man. So the introduction ends with a question. This is like, can truth exist without an interpretation? I don't think so. At some level, maybe my whole thing is the least amount of interpretation is the best. We talk about perceptual truth, but I mean, what I would say no. I'll say the answer to that is no.
I mean, it all depends what we're talking about. And I think when I'm talking about truth, when I'm referring to truth, while it can encompass my perspective at times, it's no. Well, it always encompasses how can I put it nicely? It exists independent of my interpretation. So when I put my interpretation on it, I'm only telling you, hey, truth exists, and here's my take on it. I am never, the truth itself always existed regardless of my observation of it. I can only give you my take on the truth that has always existed. And so I'm like, it's always there, but like the reality is always there. And I refer to me personally, I refer to that reality as truth. And so people who don't think that, for them, they can say, I could see how other people could say, I don't consider facts or data or the out there that doesn't exist as truth. Truth could be defined as someone's perspective and saying, when I looked at the data and separated the real part from the fantasy part, the real part is the truth. And therefore truth is something that I did, or something that was an interpretation of the facts. And I'm like, okay, I can see how you could define it that way, because, and it's not wrong to say that. So I wouldn't condemn anybody for saying that. As long as they're clear, at least I'll know where they're coming from. It's not where I'm coming from. I'm just like, truth existed and I discovered more of it now. Other people could say the world existed and I discovered more of the world. And now that I have discovered more of the world, the part of the world that was actually real versus the fantasy part I thought about the world, the real part was truth, or is truth now. I'm like, cool. Now, at least now we'll know what we are referring to when we use the words.
So let me try a thought experiment that just popped in my mind, because I would assume that you think it's true that people die, right? People die. Now, what if somebody would have said, well, people stop moving and their bodies turn to dust, or their bodies disintegrate, but I don't know that they die. They just stop moving. Is death an interpretation? Or, I mean, I'm trying to make a dumb example just to kind of like,
you're pointing out the interpretation portion, and that's great. But what that shows is that people can define things differently. And they're like, some people can say death is not as people stop moving. Some people can say death is when the spirit departs from the body. And I'm like, hey man, me from a clinical background, like death is when you can't do the things you need to do when you're dilated, your heart is stopped, and you're not breathing. I'm like, you dead. Like, what if you pass gas still, or you have this random jerky? What happens? I'm like, hey man, pupils are fixed. The heart's not moving. You dead. It's official. I'm calling it. It's happened.
Right.
It's like, well, that's your perspective. Like, it is. It is my perspective. But that is literally what I define as death.
Right.
And other people can define death differently. And I'm aware that we use words this way, but it's just the things we are observing are the same. Like, you could observe the same things I am observing. And if I didn't want to use the shortcut of the word death, I could describe the whole definition of the word each time I wanted to refer to this. And you could refer to your whole definition of your word, and then we would have clarity. But it just takes so long.
I mean, I think at the beginning of this right now, I can't say for certain, I think there's a line that can be drawn, because the difference in these two interpretations of this fake example that I give is a relationship to life. Because to me, the whole, that person laid down and they stopped moving, and then their skin is now disintegrating. Well, they died. To me, and I don't know, maybe I'm just over generalizing right now, but I'm thinking, like, for me, everything that I'm thinking is a relationship to life, to how, because it's like, yeah, people can lay down, but I don't have a life anymore. The life is gone. The thing that mattered, the source core thing that mattered at the end of the day for all decisions and things was gone.
Right.
So that's the connection that I'm making. So that's when people say, well, you ever been around somebody who says, and I have friends that just, they'll have somebody does something, like, I don't know, somebody comes down the street and is like shooting or something like that. And it's like, oh man, he just shot up the block. It's like, people can die. And so therefore, this doesn't seem like a good thing. But to some people, it's just like, It's just the thing that happened.
It just happened.
And that's what I mean about the relation. I'm gonna start trying. I'm not studying, but I'm gonna just keep trying to think about this. Like when I'm having a disconnect with thought, because I do notice that when people don't tie their thoughts or their observations or their facts to life, it's like, well, that's the issue. Where I'm like, it's not true. It doesn't matter. It's not relevant to human life. It's not. That's what I mean about relevance. It's not relevant to a life. So when you start saying things, it's just like, yeah, you're coming up with facts that don't help me. They don't help me. They do anything.
Literally not relevant. Irrelevant now. Okay, I get it. These things exist. Okay.
Right. So I'm gonna keep my eye out for that, man, because I think that might be something to that. So the second part is just like breaking down observations and reason, and then just goes into, observations as raw truth. Define observations as the raw neutral data that we perceive through our senses or instruments. Which I don't know. Even so, I'll even give you an example of the example with the example. Like, how does it benefit me to be so meticulous about the difference between interpretation and perception, to the point that I think that there is no perception without interpretation? But how does that benefit me to get so minuscule, to get so deep into that part? Like, I would like to draw the line, and we need to draw a line in a place that matters, because I don't want to be Kantian. I don't want to be like, oh man, we have eyes so we can't see. And it's just like, because it's not useful. Why? Because it's not useful. It's not useful to have this whole, oh man, we can't perceive because we put all the interpretations in our perceptions. No, well, let's find a line and let's cut it there. Let's
have a little bit more. Let's have a more helpful criteria than just who could say. Like, well, you're saying right now you are speaking, so I recommend that we should say it too. Here, I'll try. But yeah, I definitely think it's helpful to make things, like you said, make things practical. Like, I wouldn't go and debate every single human being to discriminate between the observation versus the interpretation in all areas. I'm like, nope. Only when we get to a conclusion that's unhelpful. Like, all right, I saw something. I don't like that other people voted the way I didn't like, and therefore we have to kill them all. I'm like, all right. So now it's time to take a step back. We've officially crossed an ethical boundary where you are now starting to take away life. All right. Now we have gone into the moral realm. It's time to analyze do some root cause analysis. Go back to the thoughts here. See where we broke, where we got off. Because whenever we're getting to a point where we're actively destroying life, or moving away from life, or moving toward death, then I'm like, okay, we have reached a level of moral concern that is worth investigating.
I mean, I agree. I mean, that's why I'm only really interested in ethical conversations when it comes to philosophy. Outside of that,
there we go.
It could be entertainment here and there, but I'm not that deep into it at all. So interpretation, blah, 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 blah. So reason as interpretive truth. Interesting. Define reason as the process of integrating and interpreting observations to create meaning or actionable knowledge. I mean, that's what it is. That's the whole point. So reasons apply subjective frameworks to observations, or adding context and relevance. I mean, to me, that goes that relevance word again. It has to be. That relevance is always, to me, related to life.
See, that's the key part right there. That is the standard. Life is the standard. If life is the standard, then having an actual goal-oriented action that is to prolong that life, increase the quality of life, I think that is a helpful context to say, this is what I mean by relevant truth. I want information that helps me live better. And better meaning I want my life to be prolonged and my quality of life to increase. These are the things that I like I said, are better. It's like the closer I am to death, the worse it is. The closer I am to life, the better it is. Yes. And life is not just existence. It's the fulfillment and the actual meaning that come from actual being in existence.
Yeah, it's true. I agree. But like I say, I always just think about that Terrence Howard interview every time we get into that. Because it's like, I've identified these things, but they don't make our life better.
These are not solution. And most importantly, they aren't helping me solve think issues we have.
Oh man. So explain the interaction between the two. Explain how observations provide what and reason provides the why and how. And that's true. I mean, but what can be confusing for people?
How does reason provide the why and how? Like if you had to explain it to a child, how would you tell them, kids, man is different than other creatures on the earth because we actually have the ability to reason. It's like, why does that matter? How would you, what would that mean to you?
Gotta go back to life. I mean, that's what the whole point. Yes. It's about survival. Like you just said, your enjoyment, your longevity or possibility to enjoy. Probability and possibility to enjoy, I guess, your life. But that is the relevance. That's what the whole reason piece is, and that's what the whole relevance piece is. How would I teach a kid? It's good to know this because it helps your life in that way, in this way. That's the full understanding of knowledge, and I'll give a little example for me. So I was linked up with my mentor and, just talking about, he got kids and, he's a widower, got 3 kids. And he was just talking about his son in school and how, he at that stage, we like, man, I hate school, and he was not the greatest student and I wasn't the greatest student. And I'm thinking like, what could somebody tell me back when I was a student, like to help me in school? And for me, it's just, you've got to connect these ideas to something that I actually can do, like practically do. Like, I don't want to this is what I think I lost my interest in school. Like, you're just teaching me concepts and that's cool. But what am I going to do with this thing? If you show me how these concepts lead to an actual result, like to me, this is a flaw in teaching. If you're not doing that, that's not good teaching. That's not a good curriculum. It's not even good teaching because I think that it's probably going to have to come from curriculum. You're not helping me make these ideas and use them in a real way. And so therefore I'm disinterested because I don't see how this actually helps my life.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. I mean, that happened. A lot of my education was spent wondering, what are we doing here? Why did no one else find a way to connect any of the things that were talked about today to any part of life at all? It's just like, that's your job. Like, I hear you, and eventually it will be my job. But, in the context of actively teaching this material, you were supposed to take something I didn't know and associate it to what I did. And, I'll broaden it out and associate to more things over time. Mm-hmm. I am the child. I am the one who came here to learn. You can't expect me to make the lesson plan. You're going to need to do some of the work to hear it all. And so it's, I don't know. To me, I thought that was infuriating to go to a history class and have them, ask me how many things I remember from the things they said. And eventually I could train my memory to be a little bit better. And there's nothing wrong with training your memory, but that can't be the only cognitive skill we're building today. Like, I don't know, like there are so many other ways you could have done that. I could have memorized the order of blocks or the order of colors, and I could have memorized the order of pi. There are lots of ways to test my memory. History was supposed to be about the actual progression of human beings and the things that we've done it before. I was supposed to learn a lesson. You were supposed to teach me a lesson.
True.
I could use this. What was the principle? What even were the examples? I came here so that you would give me more than I had. I started with nothing, so I expected to leave with something. But I still have nothing. So it was infuriating. And like when that happened in math class too, when math class became memorization, I'm like, and now I'm bad at math. Oh, wait, now this is worse. But I don't know what you're using any of these things that they told us to memorize. Like, know the quadratic equation, know these random geometric formulas, know these random other things and other examples that we just did. I'm like, I hope we get these exact questions
on the test. Yeah.
Otherwise, I won't know what's going on because we still haven't taught this. I didn't know before. I definitely don't know it now.
It's rough, and it just takes the orientation, just connected to. And I think what people do today, and this is the irritating piece, to remedy that, everything becomes group projects now. So
Good.
now you're applying within a group. And
Right.
I like to imply about myself. I get the group projects. Look, I'm not against group projects, but don't tell me that everything is a group project.
Right. That's just a way to do things. There's no problem teaching well enough to build up skills and then say, all right, now let's work together in groups to practice our interdependence. I'm like, that's great. But you can't start there. You can't. Anyway, I hate it when they start there. It makes it so much harder to take a bunch of incomplete learning and then say, now let's put a bunch of incompetence together, and now y'all have to figure this out. I'm like, we will eventually figure it out, but mostly we're going to learn that we just don't have to all do it. Someone has to do it, but it doesn't have to. And now, is this the lesson you wanted to teach?
The lesson of one person does all the work. Yeah. Who's that person that we can get to do? Oh man, it reminds me of Compa Chicos, man. Yeah. You're learning life lessons, people lessons, man. So what's this real for psychological and ethical implications? I mean, I think we kind of touched on that. So it says, examine how failing to distinguish between observations and reason impacts human behavior. Psychological people who conflate the two may impose their rational framework on others. Absolutely. Assuming universal agreement on what observations mean. I mean, here's the thing. This is why I love ethics. Yes, you're absolutely right. And somebody's going. So I don't know if I learned it in school. I mean, I went to public school, Baltimore. So it's like I had a people education. And so I understood that doesn't have to be right, doesn't have to be wrong, but somebody's going to take control. I get that part, right? And so, and I think we had a conversation before when we were saying, is are kings bad? Is it the king that's bad, or is it the principles that the king operates under?
Right.
And at the end of the day, I just want a good framework. I almost don't care how you implement it, because if it's good and you adhere to it, then you implemented it well. That's how I look at it in a sense. And when it comes to like stuff like capitalism, when it comes to stuff like freedom to choose, yes, I'm going to impose my rational framework on other people, and I don't care. And you don't have to like it. And if you want to do something about it, we can do that. That's how I feel about it.
When it comes to private property and actively engaging in trade with other people, when it comes, you have to respect individual rights. If they aren't willing to respect individual rights, then yes, you must do something about it.
I mean, but if you don't build a full mental framework, if you're still on level 1, you don't understand how all these things come together. And this is what blows my mind, because I think I was listening to Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson does exactly what I'm talking about right here. Overvaluation. He'll apply his framework to everything. You almost can't even get the question out. He's like, oh yeah, I know exactly what that is. This is that. And what people do in that circle, even with him, they come to the conclusion that there's this evil out in the world that's trying to do this, nefarious thing. Yes. And for me, I'm thinking like, no, this is just a fragmented mind. Fragmented minds don't have actual direction. And so this is the result of it. And to me, it's like you have overthought what's happening here. It's just fragmented minds doing what fragmented minds do. And it just, of course, you're observing it. So you're going to see like some idea here. You're getting the idea from you. But these are just fragmented minds operating like fragmented minds.
Yeah, they're not thinking this through. This isn't a well-coordinated effort by a world power.
No.
They're just dumb, or they're just incomplete. Like they may actually be intelligent people who can pick up on things very quickly, but they are specifically in this point not using that cognitive ability to solve this problem well. They are not using that well at all, and that may not even be their long-term goal. I don't know. Is it happening right now?
No, it's not. That's why one of the profound things I think we stumbled upon last week is that, or me, I did within the conversation that we had is, and I think I want to do a talk about this. Leaders create civilizations. Leaders create civilizations because civilizations doesn't consist of all the people that can handle that type of thing, right? It's civilizations are not a group of civilized people that got together. It's order that was given, and then some people just acquiesce and go along with it. There were some people really understand it and like it.
Right. It's just like how organizations are built or hierarchies are built or businesses are built. I'm like, these things are built. This was a concept in someone's mind that was imposed upon reality and then actively built by transmitting this vision to other people who bought in, agreed, shared the vision, and effectively started, building on to what was already like the foundation that was laid. But it's cool to think that a lot of civilization was directed. Not every single step along the way, but a lot of it. When someone was like, hey, I was over here by my lonesome in the forest building a house and just kind of subsistence farming till I'm like, this was a terrible plan. I'm going to get other people and let them know we should diversify some of these skills. We don't need to operate alone all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's helpful.
Yes.
But this is the nature of people. This is what I mean about leaders. And when I say leaders, I don't necessarily mean like no specific type of leader. There's intellectual leaders, there are procedural leaders, cultural leaders. I mean, look, say what you want about Trump. He has leadership qualities, okay? Yeah. And people just like to say he's a dummy, he's terrible, he's this, he's that. He does things. He does things.
Don't like a lot of things he does. But he is doing them, though.
Yes. And you're sitting there complaining about things. You're not actually doing them. So whatever with that part. But that's what I'm put to be aware. So I guess to get back to the point, I'm extremely aware that I am imposing my rational framework onto people when it comes to ethics. I'm so aware of it that I wrote a book about it so I could become more aware about it, just to know that, hey, here's a rational framework. You need it for a society to flourish, and you need to back it up with consequences. I will supply all of those things. I have no issue with this. So you could complain and just be like, oh, you're just, this is the way that you grew up and you can't know anything that you didn't encounter. So, you're just a product of your environment and whatever. Got it.
That's your interpretation. You're free to have one, but that's not going to change my choice. Like, I'm clear about what I said and I still mean it. So we either can all agree to respect each other's rights and get on board to do the thing that I think is ethical and moral, or we could have this conversation differently.
Yes, very differently. But before I just jump in, I'll just add really quick. That's what people miss out on. That's what people like to gloss over, that enforcement imposition point. Like, oh no, everybody can be everything at all times in any ways, and we shouldn't get in the way of that. It's idiotic. And this is part of the reason why Trump is president. So,
right. I mean, when people say those things, they're showing where they're coming from. They're showing what their values are. They're showing what their wishful thinking is. And that's fine to have those things in their mind. But when they say it out loud, and I'm like, those things are not true things. When we both look at reality, we see that it's not currently present. So we both know that on a concrete level or a sensation level, it doesn't exist. You say you want it to exist. I mean, that's fine to have aspirations and that's whatever. But to assume those things are shared is an overvaluing of this thing. You are projecting your values onto others at this point, and that's an overgeneralization.
Makes sense. So I think we kind of touched on the next one. It says education the need to teach observational skills and critical thinking as complementary rather than interchangeable. Damn, that's deep.
Right.
We said it, but I don't know if we said it like that.
Right. You definitely got to be real specific about the value of observational skills and what they are versus actual critical thinking, what criteria are being used. And it's certainly, anyway, it's helpful to break that down, and it's helpful just to say that really specifically that these are two different skill sets that have to be done together. And yeah, they have to be done together to have the...
Hold up. I can't even hear you. My bad, man. My earphones went up. All right, my bad.
There you go. You're back.
Yeah.
But yeah, to me, like when it comes to the education piece, like you teach people the observational skills to say, you have to get good at recognizing what exists, how to describe what exists, and how to effectively just notice and pay attention to the right things that are relevant to this moment. That in itself is a skill set. Develop the ability to pay attention, control your attention, but then also have a criteria for what to pay attention to. That's key. And then having the critical thinking where you have criteria to say, of the things that we're paying attention to, what things are relevant? What things do we know? Have like what ways have we used this things we've observed, and what ways do we look at what's observed and say these were previous mistakes that were made, or these are previous successes that were made? How can we pick those right things after that and think critically enough to say what's going to apply to this scenario right now? How can we contextualize this information and make it applicable to what we're doing right this moment?
I mean, that's facts. I think. Once again, you took the smart man route, man. I'm sitting over here thinking like the dummy, and
it's helpful to have the understanding. I'm just saying this to say that helps me understand and helps me make more sense of this. When you want to explain it to somebody else, and you just give them a direct example, and just you point out, hey, it's cool to know that heat exists and that stoves are hot, but like that stove is hot. And if you touching that stove right now with your hand, it's going to burn you. You need to think critically enough to be able to discern that it's time to use a pan on top of the stove if you want to cook something.
And I mean, I definitely agree, and I think that's helpful. I think what it is that my mind is already in a place. So, been playing around with this idea of contemplation versus entertainment, and my thing is this: on the base level of survival, do I have the luxury of contemplation? Can I interpret? Can I perceive something? Have I dedicated enough? Have I been afforded enough time to contemplate, to train my brain to think about the possibilities that this thing could be? Or do I see the thing, think the thing, do the thing? Like I'm at base level, I need to survive, I need food, I need shelter. Like aren't concepts and reason luxuries of life? That's kind of what I'm thinking about. What do you think about that?
Short answer, no. Long answer is having the time to reflect is a luxury. Yes.
Okay. That's what I'm saying.
Yes. You are 100% correct on that. Concepts are the way human beings make meaning in the world, and therefore the things that guide our actions. And so if we want to live, like they are a necessity.
Got it. True.
But there are higher and higher levels of there are more and more complex concepts that exist, and not everybody has to have all knowledge to subsist. It all depends what problems we're talking about, but a lot of things are solved with really, really lower levels of concept. If you could figure out that things grow from the ground and that the things that you eat from the ground, you throw back in the ground and they keep growing from the ground, I'm like, that took like 3 or 4 steps. You can probably do that. You can probably stay alive. Or you can look around, you're like, hey, other animals eat animals and they stay alive. If I find an animal and I kill it and eat it, I can stay alive. I'm like, hey, monkey see, monkey do. That took like 2 or 3 steps. There are very low level concepts that are necessary for bare minimum survival. And so I don't want to pretend that everybody has to always be living in a self-reflective world for that to be the only way to live in a human way. So anyway, yes.
I mean, I think it's my point on this is just that the person that's in survival mode doesn't have the luxury to develop nuance. That's what I'm saying. That I need to act, and I need to act now because everything is crucial. And so I am using the framework, whatever little framework that I have. We're not expanding this thing. We're just going to use it. Fire does fire things. House does house things. And so that's why for me, I'm just thinking about this. I get what you're saying, because to me, that's what I want to say. Like what you're saying is the observational skills and the critical thinking. If you have that luxury, But in crunch time, you don't have these luxuries. That's why, to me, when as thoughtful as I like to think myself to be, in a crucial moment, I just cut it off. I see and do. I don't, there's no more, could this be that? It's just go. That's where I am. And there's a comfort in that too. But at the same time, I'm not developing any more thoughts, really. I'm not having a lot of nuance. It's just see and do. So,
and that makes complete sense. And that's exactly what makes, like, there has to be a priority list in the world. If you're going to live, there needs to be a list of priorities you're gonna address. And I think that's super helpful just to know going in. It's like, all right, everybody has a certain amount of time on Earth. You got to spend that time wisely. Gonna have to prioritize getting food, getting shelter, getting protection, and then having enough resources to, make a family, make a tribe, make some more babies, and then have them do the same thing. Like, we have to prioritize existence. Once we have that, then we can start talking about other things that we do with quote unquote free time.
Yeah, damn. It almost made me want to introduce the whole idea, but I guess I just give a tease. It's like, once you take care of your survival, either you're going to develop more, or you can contemplate, or you can just dedicate that to entertainment. And maybe they can be both at the same time, but like I don't know. I'll dig into that more later, another time.
Right. I mean, human beings have limits. One of the ways we deal with our limitations is by by engaging in recreation. And it's super helpful when recreation is a reward for us to do something productive. But it is also a danger that recreation could be used for a coping mechanism or used as a distraction. When we engage in more recreation than productivity, then we get that thing pear-shaped. Anyway, yes, bad choices.
Yeah, I'm gonna dig into that one though. I'm gonna come back with something a little more concrete. So oh man, I skipped this guy. I went the wrong place. I guess I'll just run through the rest of these really quick, and because I made a mistake and skipped. So I went from the psychological, just saying that people may conflate and impose their rational framework on others, and then I skipped where I was supposed to hit the ethical piece, where it says overemphasizing reason might lead to intellectual arrogance. I can see that happening, and while overvaluing observations could result in a lack of deeper understanding or action.
Yeah. I mean, there's always been a problem between these false dichotomies of like the practical people and the conceptual people, the ones who are the empiricists, and what are the other ones I'm trying to think of?
Rationalists,
right? And yeah. I'm just like, this is a false dichotomy. Like you come to the other one, and you're like, these things are complementary and not interchangeable. We're not going to go over here and just say we need to only focus on the range of the moment and be present at all times and just kind of react to whatever. We don't need to only do that. We don't need to go over to the other side and just say, look at all these principles I have. I know a lot of abstract concepts and then just never apply them. I'm like, well, yeah, those are two mistakes that could be made and have been made.
Exactly. And I think at some point in time, it might be interesting to say which way they work, because I think they do have a definite path, but I think that might be a larger conversation than what this is. But I could put that on the list, really. And I mean, you just hit the next point. It just says, talk about the importance of recognizing limitations of each element and forming a balanced worldview. So that's because I think that the goal to me is to have a balanced worldview. However, one should dominate because of its limitations. Because you can't know all things, concepts should dominate. Because you can't know all things, you can't be objective about every single thing. You're going to have some context. And when I say concept should dominate, reason should dominate. The subjective factor should dominate because you have a life to it all ties into life again. You have a life to maintain, and the only way you can't maintain it worrying about other things that aren't about your life. You know what I'm saying? All the time. There's a priority here. So that's the whole point I'm trying to make.
I hear you. Yeah. I wouldn't wouldn't say one would dominate. I would say that they just have to work in concert. Like just like every plan is not done until you do it. Until you do the plan, it's not done yet. Like this, I'd say no plan survives contact with reality. I'm like, yeah. You need to, if you want to get better at something, you have to both plan out how you want to do it and then enact the plan and then go back and say, how well did the plan work? All right. Maybe it was a great plan. Maybe it was a terrible plan, but it ought to be evaluated with evidence instead of just mental models.
Well, see, I push back on that because I would say one dominates because one sits within the context of the other. Naturally, you can't. It's like, I wish I had I might put a graphic in here because when I think about introversion versus extroversion, like some people look at the world like this, like this is a triangle and I'm sitting here, and so it's me, and then the things that I interact with, which fit within this area here, and the things that don't fit within that area, they exist, but they're not relevant, right? And then to me, I look at extroversion as a triangle out here, and this is me. And so I'm trying to figure out how I can fit into the world and not figuring out how the world fits within my view. And you can take the extroverted perspective, but then you're really tiring yourself out because you literally can't do these things. You can't do all things, right?
Right.
And so I would rather take the perspective that can actually be done. And because you're going to have a perspective at some point in time. And so you should develop it in some way and not have it be some unconscious thing that just pops up. But you can, if that's what you would like to pursue. But that to me is what shows you there's a natural issue here. You have to worry about your stuff. And then because when you don't worry about your stuff, then there is no more you, and we don't even have to worry about it. So I get the idea of, working in tandem, and one of them is working in tandem, but one has to sit within the other. So that's the only point that I push on that with. So then it goes into the real world applications. I think I skipped into this one before because I could jump into education, but it started with politics, just how conflating facts and reason fuels polarization and misunderstanding. I mean, I think we touched on that a lot. Unless you want to add something else to that, because I mean, of course, that's a thing.
And there's so much to add. There are so many ways we could apply that. We have, yes, there are a lot of ways we could say that differently, but I think it's really, really true. I don't want to list every example in the world. So
yeah, I guess, and I think, man, if I were to add anything here, I just will reiterate that when some people talk about reason, they're talking about a specific reason. Mm-hmm. And when I talk about Jung, one of the reasons I like talking about Jung is because he presents different mechanisms of reason or styles of reason. But I know some people would take offense to them being reason, but I'm okay with calling them loosely reason. It's just, FI reason or TE reason or FE reason. It's a person. They're doing stuff. So sure, whatever.
I think you said it in there, and I think it's key that reason is the faculty where we're actively integrating all these different facts and concepts and such. And I think that's huge to know. Like that's to me, I think that was super clarifying. And when it's like, when we're saying like man has the ability to reason, we're talking about taking what's observable and then using that data as a substrate to conceptualize, to make principles, to build a mental framework. So I think that's great to have.
Yeah. And the only reason I bring that up is because when I think of the reason, when I read how conflating, if the issues in politics, how conflating facts and reason fuels polarization and misunderstanding, I'm thinking of reason as a staunch stance. That's really the way that I'm thinking about. Like, I'm not evaluating the quality of someone's ability to reason. I'm just saying that they have adopted a position and they are applying it. And that's kind of how I think about that usage of reason in that sentence right there. I guess that's what I'm saying. Relationships. It says The harm caused by assuming rational conclusions from facts without considering emotions or context. I mean, that's a real thing. But relationships are a little interesting because it becomes an if-then statement, right? If you want to maintain this relationship, you need to you could state all the facts, you could state reason, but you could also lose this relationship. So if you would,
Well, all depends how you do it. Tact matters. People are still people. They want to be treated as if they have some sort of a
value, dignity. Okay, yeah. So, but that's kind of like, this might not even tie really, but I'm just thinking about, like those like extremely smart people that may be autistic or maybe, what do they call Asperger's? They call them Asperger's or whatever. And they're just like, they really just state things in very matter of fact terms and have no understanding of human relationship that much at all.
right.
So, I mean, we've had some INTJs in this group who actually, I think they celebrate that sometimes.
Right? They give zero effort forgiveness during this discussion. You can feel bad, and that's okay. We've made our peace with that. Like, all right. Well, thank you for sharing. Man, it's funny when they take it as a badge of honor, though. They're like, this is who I am. That's who, and that's all that matters. Yes, authenticity. I'm real. You are. Right now, you're really being a jerk. You're actively pushing people away for no reason. They're all here. We were on your side this whole time until you started actively attacking them. Rein it in, please. Rein it in. I get it, though. Yes, bad things exist. You want to be clear that you are against bad things. Thank you for that. Try to do it doesn't actively isolate every person who is supposedly not harming you. But yeah, anyway, relationships can be are tricky because they deal with values, and we have to take the other person's values into consideration if we want to maintain a relationship.
Right. That's true. And like, small piece, I just think people lose sight of the fact that your family and friends are the people who accept the BS from you. That's what their job is. This other people you don't know, like, many of us, including me, I don't want your extra baggage. Like, this is the stuff you should speak to your family and friends about. This is what they're for. They have a soft spot for you. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to my family and friends, the people who have a soft spot for me. It's just like, that they're like, oh man, here he goes again. But we love him.
But you have trust with them. You built that up over time. You have an actual connection that's worthwhile. You built that actual relationship for this reason. And so I find it frustrating but avoidable for people to be so concerned or be so frustrated that other people aren't treated like their family does. Like, oh, I don't want to try to you. I have no requirement to treat you and give you benefit of a doubt and grace and work with you and hope it's better. I'm like, well, no, I'm actually not involved with that.
Nope. Not invested.
No, I mean, really, what do you? I'm not involved in this. That is personal preference you have.
Right. So the next one was the education one. We already tapped into the educational one. And that was the real world applications. And then they go into balance of perspective. It says basically advocating for a balanced perspective that respects independence and interplay of observations and reason. I mean, yeah, we touched on that. I think that's all been incorporated. So it says encourage a process where observations are gathered and accepted as they are. That's one. And two, reason is applied cautiously, ensuring interpretations remain flexible and context sensitive. I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think that's completely appropriate. Make sure your observations are in line with reality and stay consistent with that. Make sure your reason is effectively focused on the context. It's like, all right, we integrated all these facts, we integrated all these observations, and they are super helpful in this context. Not in every context, but in this one, the one we observed it in. Okay, great. Yes.
Right. And so then it gets to, what does this mean? So it's just like encouraging people to reflect on the process, how they process truth in their own lives. I mean,
right. This is epistemology time. That's the great. Like, how do we know this? What do we know? How do we know it? And this is that time we get to engage in that. Oh, yeah, this is important for this reason. When I say I believe you, or I say I trust that it's going to be a certain way tomorrow, when I have a idea of what the future is going to hold, this is what I mean. I believe the future is going to be like this for this reason. I have a lot of observations to hold to say, all right, this is something that is possible and likely because I saw it happen today, so I can make the assumption that it will happen tomorrow. It is more likely than not to happen.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so I think the what does this mean has come out within the conversation, because I think we kind of, I wouldn't say we sidetracked. It's just that for me, that's where it came. It was like there were examples throughout all of this. Like, what does it mean? Because that's why we get to the idea of, well, relevance to life and specific examples. I think we came up with some specific examples, but I mean, the concept at the end of the day, to me, is relevance to life. And truth is like where we set these thresholds. They're ballistics. I guess that's the word, because the reason why I'm thinking about ballistics is just in music, and this is neither here nor there, but basically when you're measuring sound, electric voltage, I guess, voltmeter, you can change the ballistics. And so, it's like liquid, but basically what you're saying is like capture the measurement based upon this increment of time. So if I say slow the time down, then, the up and down of the music is slow. The waveforms are slow. If I say speed the time up, then I'm capturing a more accurate version, but it's faster, but does it help me? Does it help me do what I'm trying to do? So the whole point I'm just trying to get to is just the whole ballistics of, yes, units of measure. This is what we're doing, like qualitative and quantitative units of measure. Better or worse, fast, slow, faster, slower. Truth, even truth. Truth, as we've come to figure out, is just like, look, yeah, or interpretation and pure observation. It's just a line that we draw. It's pretty much, what is the practical, useful definition for truth? Then somebody's going to be like, well, that's not absolute truth. It's like, we don't care. It's not the fact that fact, actually, we need to define it. And once we define it, it is truth, because
the point of the definition was to make it contextually accurate, because absolute accuracy is unavailable. We are human beings. That was never on the table.
Right. So offer some strategies to separate observations from interpretation, such as practicing mindfulness to notice raw data before jumping to conclusions. Okay.
Yeah, I like that. Just make a list. It's like, hey, write down the things that happened. Just events. Just give me a timeline. And then later we can say, okay, let's put not that we have a list of all the things that happened, or the things that you observed. Now we can then say, what do you think about the things that you observed? Mm-hmm. Were they good? Were they bad to you? Did they help you in your goals? Did they take you away from your goals? Those are judgments now. Now we're making a different. Now we're looking at it in a different lens.
True. I mean, not that I think it even requires all of that, really, to be honest with you.
No. Well, people ask to separate it. I'm like, make a list. Make you right now just say the words out loud of the things you observed. Say the timeline of events, or say the aspects of the thing that existed. It's like, was it? Tell me the colors. Tell me the what. Tell me the what about the thing it is. Don't tell me how much you liked it. Don't tell me why it's here. No, just tell me the what.
I mean, I think that'll be interesting, because then you get to examine. It's like, well, that's not what you put extra spice on it. Another strategy is seeking multiple perspectives to test the validity of rational truths. Kind of tricky. That's a little tricky. Yeah,
that depends on the person you're talking to now.
Yeah. So you got to have some kind of a backbone. That's the thing. You got to have some structure of your own. Because how would you even be able to test validity without a structure?
That is an extroverted thinking thought. It's like, we are going to, have a strategy to separate observations by using, extroverted thinking. And I'm just going to find people who are better at this than I am. I'm like, okay, man, but now you really just outsource your thinking to someone else. I'm not saying it's going to end up wrong or end up poorly, but it's clearly inferior to you doing the work. You're not doing the work, right? Okay, let's all agree that didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, I don't know if I could see, I mean, I do seek multiple perspectives, but I have to put them in my context.
Yeah. But you actually did the work, though. You actually did the time to form an actual context first and have an actual worldview and something to compare it to and say, all right, I have my interpretation of the world. This is what I think, and this is my reasons. I formulated an argument supported with I formulated an argument, work from claims made with a bunch of reasons. All right, I'm ready now to compare this to what other people are doing. That's you've taken the responsibility on yourself. Sometimes people will, don't do that part. And they're just like, we're just going to have a bunch of people weigh in and we'll all vote. And whoever has the most thoughts, that's the one we'll go with. And I'm like, that's super dangerous.
Yeah.
I don't like that at all.
I saw this happen with JD Vance this week. Honestly, I wanted to have a conversation about immigration this week, but I didn't have the time to put it together. Basically, his last point was, I don't like these things. And I think most people in America would agree with him.
That's crazy.
I mean,
that is that. I hear you. That actually has been said multiple times this week. Just like the American people voted for this, and therefore we have people on our side. We have consensus. We're doing things. Like, it is illegal. It is against the Constitution and also immorally wrong. A lot of people wanted it, and therefore we're gonna do it. Like, oh, this is not a conversation. I hear you. All right.
Yeah, man. It's a tricky time, man. It's just a tricky time.
People are going to look back at this time and say, what the F were y'all doing?
Are you sure about that? I don't know, man. I think people have become so, it's my word, feckless, man. They become so ineffective that they just think that complaining is a virtue. And I'm like, people needed stuff to happen. And this is once again the thing that started this conversation, because there are people, and man, I could go through the take on Elon Journal and Ben Baer from the Ayn Rand Institute had a take on the pardons from Trump. And it's like, for some people, you could be right, you could be wrong, but I know you're not going to do anything. So I don't even care about your point of view. It just doesn't even matter to me. You're just not ever going to be involved in anything. You're always thinking about what to do. Like, I don't come from that world, and I respect action,
Yeah.
So,
especially intelligent action. But yes, I definitely have to actually do something. Having thoughts is nice, but it's only step one. You just have to go and do the thing. Otherwise, reality doesn't change. And that's the important part. The changing. It's like, problems existed. I thought about them. I'm like, oh, you're still here though.
So yeah. Oh man, I hate this when people do this. Emphasize the importance of humility in reasoning and curiosity in observation. I think humility is becoming a word that I hate.
Define the part that you hate so we can be clear about it.
I don't even know if it's the word that I hate. It's the way that people use it. It's the fact that they try to say, they use it as in place of reason, in a sense. So I was watching a short clip. It's like, I don't know, Indian guru type of whatever, that Oso type of dude or whatever, I guess. And they were asking him, like, what kind of politics does he use, or do you like freedom or individualism or collectivism, blah, blah, blah. His answer was, I am guided by my humility. No, it's either his humanity. It might have been his humanity. That might have been what it was. My humanity or humility or whatever it was. But it's just this idea of, I'm going to do what I feel like is right in the moment, Yeah. And humility makes people seem small, or people try to use it to make you feel small. Like, what about your humility? It's like, look, I saw this thing and this doesn't make sense. But your humility, you can't know all things. You can't be this and you can't know things. You're not, it's just like when, and I know I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's just like Tal Safoni, CEO of ARI. He uses this clip from Barack Obama when he was doing a rally. And he was like, man, you all think you're so smart. You're not smarter than everyone else out there. You think you got that job because you think you're just so much better. You're not better than everyone. Everyone is good. Everyone is this. It's like, what is he talking about? So that's all I wanted to put in there. It's like,
yes, people do use humility poorly in the sense of they try to use the idea of humility to attack excellence, to attack increased performance, and try to flatten things. And because if you get to the level 6, you can empathize with other people and say, I understand why you think that. I understand why you think that. I understand why this society thinks that. I understand why this society thinks that other thing in that different way. You're like, okay, I can perceive that. Some people get stuck at that level though and don't realize that there are some things that we compare those societies to. Like some of these societies are moving toward the goals they say they are. They moving toward the goals they say they want. Some societies didn't get there. Some societies got there a lot faster. Okay, that's different. But if you never get that experience, you don't ever get that ability to discern between them. You're just like, everybody's the same. And therefore, when people are like, there's a hierarchy and that hierarchy is okay and justified, people are like, how can there be a hierarchy? Everybody's got thoughts and opinions. Everyone's the same. That hierarchy is unfair. I'm like, oh, it's not fair. No, life isn't fair. You all have different gifts and talents and abilities. We're not all starting from the same point with the same gifts and doing the same thing. We're clearly different people. We're different people. You have to acknowledge you have to acknowledge our differences. Some of these differences give us an inherent strength. Some of these differences give us an inherent weaknesses. But the differences,
right?
Like, I refuse to acknowledge that. I think people are valuable. Every human life matters. I'm like, I don't think we're talking about the same thing at all. And now we're not even using reason now. Now you're just saying things because you want things to be true. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a word. That's why I don't like the word.
I hear you.
Humanity and humility,
You use that idea as a way to say no one should ever think of themselves as being good or better than another person. And I'm like, that is helpful in a value standpoint. If this was an FI discussion and I was trying to say one human being is inherently more valuable than another intrinsically at birth, then I understand where that would have some value. But because because we're in a different context of saying this person thinks they're better than others and therefore they don't have any humility. Gosh, it is terrible to equate intrinsic worth with performance. And it's what I would like to focus on. Like humility applies to, humility can be applied to people's character. It has to be a character trait. They have to be humble because they actively say they recognize who they are and they recognize what is objectively true about their strengths and weaknesses. And that is what true humility looks like. But when people don't do that, it makes me frustrated that people associate humility as just having the low opinion of oneself. I'm like, oh, that's not true at all. Also, it's not helpful, but it's also not true. I mean, it's literally false. That is never what the Greeks, the Romans, that anyone who has described humility throughout all of the ages has ever supported or talked about. So we know it's not true, but we also see that you're just using this word to tear down people who have higher performance than you.
I get it. I mean, there is a desire, and yes, I need people to be on my level so I don't feel like they're better than me. I need that.
I don't like that feeling. That's a bad feeling. People out here are better than me, and I don't like it.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I get that. So here's the conclusion, I guess, to just wrap up the core idea. Observations and reason are distinct, but it's really repeating the same thing. The independence must be respected to avoid conflation and misjudgment. And so true understanding begins when we honor both what we see and how we think. That's like the takeaway. That's what they gave me.
Okay. Fair enough. I mean, that is a really broad way to say it matters that what you see is verified in reality and that you use what you see to come up with these concepts and abstract reasoning to think about what you've seen and how it relates so that you can then apply that principle in a new situation so that you can further guide action. Like, okay, yes, you can say it that way.
Dope, man. That's it, man.
That's it.